What's up, everybody? This is Chris Sarai bringing you another edition of the Car Concierge Show, the show that helps with the buying, selling, maintaining, and repairing of all of your vehicles. On today's show, we're going to talk about Stellantis as they deal with their own Dieselgate situation and pay off a certain amount to California for their emissions probe. Secondly, we're going to check out a situation where they are still trying to kill off the EV tax credit, and if something that we should keep or get rid of in the new year. And last but not least, we're going to dive into BYD and their whole slavery scandal as they go through a big process at their Brazil, building of their Brazil plant that is coming under a lot of scrutiny because of claims of slave labor and things of that nature. All right, let's jump right into it. First off, we're going to head over to Automotive News, our favorite source for news about your automotives. And we're going to check out a story about Stellantis. We've recently been talking a lot about the Dieselgate and how a lot of vehicles have the same problem with their vehicles having devices that can defeat emission standards. Let's jump right into this real quickly. All right, so of course, Automotive News. Stellantis to pay $4.2 million to resolve California emissions probe. All right, this is from Reuters News and it's from December 24th, Christmas Eve. Stellantis agreed to pay $4.2 million to resolve a California investigation into excess emissions, the state said. The California Air Resources Board, CARB, said on December 23rd the vehicles covered by the settlement for violations of air quality regulations include 2014 through 2016 Ram ProMaster 1500, 2500, and 3500 vehicles equipped with a 3.0-liter diesel engines. The state said the vehicles had an unapproved device that circumvented emissions control and resulted in nearly 55 tons of excess oxides of nitrogen being released into the air. Stellantis in 2022 paid a $5.6 million settlement to California for similar allegations involving gas-powered vehicles. Stellantis did not immediately respond to a request for comment. The company agreed as part of the settlement to recall the vehicles to modify the emission control system to be compliant with state regulations. The settlement includes a more than $2 million civil penalty that will go to the state's Air Pollution Control Fund and $2.1 million that will fund a project to provide incentives for ocean-going cargo vessels to slow down in certain areas during peak whale and ozone seasons to provide wildlife for air quality benefits. Why? In a separate federal emissions probe, Stellantis in June 2022 pled guilty to criminal conspiracy and agreed to pay about $300 million in plea agreement to resolve a U.S. Justice Department diesel emissions fraud investigation. In 2019, California settled with FCA over allegations it used defeat device software to circumvent emissions testing on more than 100,000 diesel vehicles nationwide. California received more than $78 million of the $500 million settlement. All right, that's over. Okay, that's crazy. For me, the craziest part of that story is where the money is going, but I don't want to dig too deep into that. So what we're talking about, of course, is that a lot of vehicles had the Dieselgate devices in them. That's what we're going to call it, the Dieselgate devices. These are devices that some automakers put in their vehicles to defeat certain emission standards. So they'd read a certain way, pollute a certain, or the pollution would read a certain way. Of course, the biggest one, of course, is Volkswagen. They are the caveat or the main source of these problems. They were the first person to be established that they were doing this, putting these kind of defeat devices in their vehicles and hurting the ozone layer and such. California is a big proponent of, emissions and their cardboard and all these type of things. So, of course, they're going to come for their top dollar first. But this is just a start. They're going to have these Dieselgate situations in most automakers. Most automakers, except for probably a ton of EVs. But this is not going to be a situation where this is going to be the first or the last. Volkswagen was the first, and this is definitely not the last. We talked about this a couple of days ago where there's going to be several vehicles that have these devices in them. And we also talked about how there was a guy over in, I think, Detroit, putting these devices in these vehicles so that they could pass, certain emissions tests. And it's going to continue because there's millions of these vehicles on the road or stockpiled at dealerships, and they still have to get rid of them. The recalls are going to be shortcoming until these people are found guilty of anything and forced to make recalls, or to, as in this case, use that money to take care of the recall, or to create the device that is going to defeat the device that's defeating the problem. Or you can't just remove the device, because if you remove the device, then the vehicle itself is not road reliable, not road ready. You can't drive it definitely in California streets or in most states because of the emissions. So this is just the start of a major problem that's going to continue for quite some time. I don't see it slowing up any, because like the last article we was talking about, it's strictly said that there's a couple of Toyota vehicles. There's a couple of vehicles. I don't want to just throw people out there, but there's a couple of vehicles that had these devices. Lots of these diesel vehicles had these devices. Diesel engines for modern day personal cars was the dumbest idea ever. It's to have a vehicle on the road and be a diesel vehicle and have it to meet certain high emission standards. It's asinine because of the carbon emissions that the diesel is going to create. There's no particular way to stop that. They have to, the DEF fluid is something that is mixed into the diesel to make it less bad for the environment. It's the diesel engine is a bad idea all the way around. And as you can see, this is what this statement is pretty much about, is the diesel engines in the 1500s, 2500s, and 3500s. So this is not going to stop, guys. It's going to continue. If you have a diesel vehicle, be prepared to probably have a recall here coming pretty soon, because it's going to happen and it's going to affect you. All right, so let's keep moving. Next up, I want to talk about the EV tax credit, and that Trump and his new regime is trying to remove the EV tax credit. And I don't really care, because the tax credit was meant to be there to help people who standardly couldn't afford EV vehicles be able to afford them. And what it was used for was just to make the rich richer. So we're going to check out this really nice content creator and check out her story on the killing of the EV tax credit and go from there.
After all the losses in the auto industry, automakers are now urging President Trump to keep the electric vehicle tax credits and boost self-driving cars. This is very interesting because a group representing major automakers, including General Motors, are urging President-elect Donald Trump to retain the key tax credits for electric vehicle purchases and take steps to speed deployment of self-driving cars. Why would car brands want to continue taking a loss? That makes no sense. But autonomous cars are something that is coming down the road, but they still haven't even figured out the firewall. But that's another story, because the Alliance for Automotive Innovation, or AAI, in a previously unreported November 12th letter to Trump, also raised concerns about vehicle emissions rules, saying, quote, federal and state emission regulations, particularly in California and affiliated states, of course those 17 states we always talk about, are out of step with current automaker realities and increased costs to consumers. So why would they want to keep these EV mandates? The automakers did not specify how they want the rules revised, but said they support, in quote, reasonable and achievable emissions regulations. The Trump transition team did not immediately comment. The letter signed by AAI's CEO, John Bozella, said automakers face unfair competition from heavily subsidized electric vehicles and technologies that are exported from China. and also noted that China was implementing a regulatory framework to support deployment of self-driving cars. The group also asked Trump to reconsider rules finalized in April requiring nearly all new cars and trucks by 2029 to have advanced automatic emergency braking systems. The group previously commented that the rules are, in quote, practically impossible with available technologies. And then last week, Reuters reported that Trump's transition team wants to kill the $7,500 consumer tax credit for electric purchases, a move that would likely slow an already stalling U.S. EV transition. Even though the mainstream media continues to tell us that everyone's buying an electric vehicle, the truth is in the numbers. Drive by any dealership, those cars are sitting and car manufacturers are losing money. Now, this week, Reuters reported that the Trump transition team plans to target federal regulators heralded by President Biden's administration that aim to make automobiles more fuel efficient and incentivize a shift toward EVs. The move appears aimed to satisfy a Trump campaign promise to, in quote, end the EV mandate, and would mirror a similar move during the first Trump administration to roll back the Obama-era vehicle efficiency standards. Now, although no such EV mandate exists, the Biden administration regulations would effectively require automakers to shift to at least 35% of their production to EVs in order to meet the 2032 standards, and encourages gradual phase out of production of vehicles that run on fossil fuels, or really is gasoline. There's no such thing as really fossil fuels because it doesn't come from fossils, but that's a whole other conversation. We've discussed this in more detail up here. Now, many employees want to keep EV rules or extend them due to their already massive investment. Ford and General Motors and Stellantis want to ask Trump to adjust the EV rules to reduce penalties because the EPA penalizes them if they do not produce electric vehicles that you don't want. Other brands want that EV mandate and rules to go away, and that includes Tesla. Elon Musk owns the bulk of the electric vehicle market, so he doesn't care if his competition goes away because he'll still own the market. Jose Muniz, who was just tapped as the next global CEO for Hyundai Motor Company, says it's time for the South Korean carmaker to lean hard into hybrids to stay flexible for uncertain times. Hyundai will start making the shift in the second half of 2025, Muniz said, and begin producing a new wave of gasoline-electric hybrids in 2026, and that will be built in Georgia, and that will be at the new Meta plant. Muniz forecasted that by the end of the decade, hybrids will comprise the largest share of the company's U.S. powertrain mix, between 30 and 40%. That makes a lot of sense, but keeping that mandate in place only hurts all car companies, and we're seeing the results by all the layoffs, the job closures on a global basis. We'll be covering more of this soon. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. If you like this video, give it a like and subscribe for more videos like this, and check out our car review channel, Car Smarts. You can support me by buying me a cup of coffee, and if you want even more content, check out the links in the description. I'm Lauren Fix. Thank you so much for watching.
All right, shout out to Lauren Fix. That was pretty awesome. Great content creator. So we'll definitely be checking her out a little bit more. So and what she said was spot on from tip to top. And the fact is that the EV market has suffered a lot, and I've said for quite some time that I believe that the market is much better with a hybrid situation. I really like Hyundai's approach when it comes to the hybrid situation. I think hybrid vehicles, as compared to straight EV vehicles, are the move first to advance to EVs. Definitely a situation where lots of EVs are not being sold. The market is telling the truth, whereas EVs are not being sold. Used cars are up in sales, specifically gas-powered used cars, and hybrid vehicles are up in sales as well, because people understand that moving to EV is going to be hard for a lot of people, with the process of having to charge your EV vehicle at home, raising electric bills, the whole ability not to travel long distances with the short periods of travel that these EV vehicles have. I mean, we're just not fully prepared to dive headfirst into EV ownership on a global scale, specifically for those people who are not extremely rich and don't have just money to burn, whereas they'll have an EV, but if they'll of course have hybrids and gas powers and whatever they need to drive around and not have to rely solely on the EV vehicle to get you from one place to another. I'm going to check out, let's just keep it going. It's going to be a hard sell. I personally don't I personally don't think the EV tax credit has benefited the world that we thought it would. It was specifically for those people who standardly wouldn't be able to afford an EV vehicle to get one. And of course, like they were saying, the majority of people who are buying EV vehicles are people who are already rich, who already own several cars, and the EV is just a luxury vehicle that they're buying for themselves just to keep up with the Joneses. And it's so I personally don't care if they get rid of the EV tax credit or not. It's not something. It will put a major stall on the sale of EV vehicles, but that's not a major thing that's going to affect. The EV vehicles are Tesla, BYD, Polestar, things of that nature. The big three, the U.S. automakers, they won't get affected directly. They have a couple EV vehicles, not a lot. They say they want to advance to EV vehicles, but they still have a long time before they'll get strictly onto that market. So the tax credit, it was just something that helped the rich. And it's one of them things like anything else. It was put out there with good intentions, but it was used in the wrong way. So just because of that, I would say that I'm not a big fan. And if it goes away, it's not a big deal. I don't see it affecting a lot of people. It was just it didn't serve its purpose. It didn't serve the purpose of getting the EV vehicle to the, people who are not already magically rich. Getting the EV vehicle to those people who standardly wouldn't be able to afford it. And it didn't accomplish that. So it didn't accomplish its goal. Then it needs to be changed or gotten rid of. That is pretty much that simple for me. Okay, so last but not least, it's going to be a short show, it looks like. Last but not least, we're going to talk about this whole BYD slavery situation over in Brazil. BYD, the EV company out of China, is building a plant over in Brazil, and they've been found that they have been treating the incoming workers from China like slaves. Let's check it out.
The Brazilian authorities halted the construction of BYD's new electric vehicle facility after workers were found living in conditions that resembled slavery. As a result, BYD severed ties with the construction business firm. A statement from the Labor Prosecutor's Office stated that Brazilian authorities had rescued 163 Chinese workers who were constructing a new EV plant for BYD in the northeastern state of Bahia. In the statement, Brazil also stated that they ordered a halt to the construction. In response, the Chinese EV behemoth said that it has severed relations with Xinjiang Construction Brazil. The EV firm vowed to defend the rights of subcontracted workers. BYD also stated that all employees will be relocated to motels. Alexander Baldi, Senior Vice President of BYD Brazil, said, BYD Auto do Brazil reiterates its commitment to full compliance with Brazilian legislation, especially with regard to the protection of workers' rights and human dignity. The prosecutor said that the construction company allegedly withheld passports and a significant portion of the workers' wages. One of the many problems highlighted by the study was that employees would not receive any compensation if they resigned after 6 months on the job. The construction firm would deduct various expenses, including flights to and from Brazil, from their paycheck. According to the study, workers would be forced to wake up at 4 a.m. every day to be ready to go to work by 5:30 a.m. The report also showed only one restroom available for every 31 people. Additionally, the authorities said that the beds did not have mattresses.
Sound like prison to me. Look like prison too. And this is horrible stuff. I mean, you know, it's we did a story a couple weeks ago about how Audi had to shut down its plant, or was moving its plant out of a area in a province in China because of the labor situation out there. And this is what we're seeing is a attack on EV companies, and I don't know where it's coming from, but they are the dirty laundry, as it were, of some of these companies is coming out to be shown, and it's due to their advancement. If you're advancing and you're growing and you're starting to, you know, do great things and do great numbers, then of course, you know, your past is going to come up to bite you. And this is what happened to a lot of these automakers. BYD had started its takeover of EV vehicles across the world, building plants over in Brazil and Mexico, and, you know, doing all these wonderful things to try to usurp Tesla. And then here we go with some news about slave conditions and all these other things. And it's definitely a situation where the stuff is probably true. I can't say that it's not true, but we have to understand that somebody is out there snitching, and once you start to advance and to grow and to start to do good things, you know, your past is going to start to come to bite you. The cancer coach is going to search your past and your future to find those bad things about you, so they can tell people to slow down your growth. It's just a natural thing that happens a lot, specifically if you start to get big, start to grow, start to make advancements, start to do well. Let's check out another story over at MSN and see what they said about this.
And in South America, authorities in Brazil have halted the construction of a factory for Chinese electric vehicle giant Build Your Dreams, or BYD. Brazilian officials rescued more than 160 workers living in the factory in slave-like conditions. The incident took place in Brazil's northeast, where BYD has been building its first electric vehicle plant outside Asia. The workers were brought from China by a third-party firm supported by the Chinese government.
We found that the work of these 163 workers was carried out in slavery-like conditions. Minimum safety conditions were not being met in the work environment. The conditions found in the lodgings revealed an alarming picture of precariousness and degradation.
Now, according to Brazilian authorities, the workers were forced to work excessive hours 7 days a week. They were forced to sleep on beds without mattresses. Rooms lacked toilet paper and water. Moreover, only one bathroom was assigned per 30 workers, prompting them to wake up at 4 a.m. just to get ready for work. No cabinets or kitchen space were provided, forcing the workers to keep their food in unsanitary conditions.
All the accommodations shared serious infrastructure and hygiene problems. The bathrooms, in addition to being insufficient, were not separated by sex, did not have adequate toilet seats, and presented poor hygiene conditions. The lack of a suitable place to wash clothes led workers to use their own bathrooms for this purpose.
Now, according to Brazil's labor prosecutors, more than 100 workers had their passports and salaries withheld and had to ask permission just to leave the facility.
In addition to the degrading conditions, the situation constitutes forced labor due to several indicators found during the inspections. The workers were required to pay a deposit, had 60% of their wages withheld, faced excessive costs for terminating their contracts, and had their passports withheld by the company. Early termination of the contract implied the loss of the deposit and the amounts withheld, in addition to the obligation to pay for the return ticket and reimburse the cost of the outward ticket.
Responding to the latest incident, Chinese EV maker BYD says that it does not tolerate the disrespect of Brazilian law and human dignity. The EV giant added that it has terminated the contract with the construction firm and that all workers have been transferred to hotels. Now, globally, BYD continues to dominate the EV market and has even outsold billionaire Elon Musk's Tesla. However, the Chinese firm is under the radar in multiple countries, including Brazil and India, for multiple labor law violations as well as tax evasion.
All right, guys. So, yeah, it was just a little bit more of what we already know. And he hinted at it at the end that, of course, BYD has just surpassed Elon Musk and Tesla as one of the highest paying EV companies out there. So that's why we kind of expected this kind of scandal to come about, once you become the top dog and, you have these things hiding behind you. Now, BYD is hiding behind the fact that they hired this construction company to hire these people to do this construction. So, they passing the buck a little bit, saying that it's the people that they hired that's doing this and it's not them directly. So, they're going to skate on that a little bit as long as they take care of these 163 people. But it's just par for the course, guys. It's specifically that, specifically with BYD and its fight against Tesla to become the top EV maker out there, you're going to see things start to come out. You're going to see things about Volkswagen as Dieselgates, and they have factories over in China that have the same situation. You're going to see them come out and start to defend themselves and move their factories. And for us, all we really care about is that they move them here to the U.S. I mean, we will not tolerate any of that type of sort of thing here. I think that obviously the construction team, at the very least, for BYD that was helping build these factories over in Brazil, thought that Brazil would let them get away with these things, and obviously Brazil would not. So they had to pivot. BYD had to pivot, get these people into hotel rooms, start, putting out the shine, letting them know that, hey, this ain't us, this is that construction company. We're going to move a different route. We're going to make sure all these things that you guys are saying about their contracts are changed. And we're going to fix this before it becomes a situation where it affects us. But, of course, it's probably already affected them to some degree where they are being put out as slave laborers. So that negative publicity is going to affect them a little bit. I don't expect it to affect them a lot because they got ahead of this really quickly, passed the blame along really quickly, and they kept on building. So, we know that they stopped the building of the factory over in Mexico, but depending on what happens in the next 23 days, we're going to really see how the EV market's going to change. Once Donald Trump is in office and he makes all his declarations and he decides what he is going to do when it comes to EVs and tariffs, it's going to make a big change on what BYD does, specifically with us here in the U.S. and across the globe, because it's going to affect everybody. So let's just pray that BYD moves away from the slave labor, that they get rid of this construction company that they put the blame on, and they continue to grow. Because, BYD, for us, we think they're a great EV company. We really hope that they can bring some of their factories and some of their technologies over here in America so we could use them, work with them, try to make money with them, because they're a great product. I'll say it again, it's a great product. I think it is I really think it's the future of EVs. Tesla's fantastic. It's kind of American made, but mostly made in China anyway. But BYD is a great company. I've met them. They're great people. So let's get on up out of here. It's a pleasure, guys. As always, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Car Concierge Show. I'm your host, Chris Surratt. Please like, share, subscribe. May you have a happy new year. And I'll probably see you once more again before the next year. But if I don't, happy New Year's and have a fantastic 2025. Peace.